needs and reactivity. So these topics I find are enormously important no matter where you are. In the way that I'm using the word need, I'm really referring to the basic human need for food, water, shelter, warmth, contact, connection, other human beings, so love. When we grow up, even if our parents are really present and do their best in providing for us all these needs, there are certain distortions that occur, certain needs that we have, we do not receive, or we do not receive to a full extent. Therefore, something occurs in the mind and in the nervous system that almost is like an imprint of that need, which is really a deficiency, like I'm lacking something. And this imprint of lack, deficiency, and need builds certain egoic structures and identifications that try to compensate for these needs throughout our life. So a lot of the times, we may not even know or notice that we have these needs. And part of what occurs in our development is because when we had these needs and they weren't really met deeply, it was so painful and so difficult to feel the discomfort of that the psyche, that the ego structure had to build certain things, certain meanings, certain assumptions about itself and the world, and certain ways of functioning and moving through the world to get our needs met or to disconnect from that sense of need, disconnect from that sense of lack. And actually, there are so many different strategies that the ego structure comes up with to deal with these lacks and deficiencies. So many different twists and turns in consciousness of resistance, of push, of pull, of distortion, of difficulty, of running away, of hiding, of fighting. So all these different things actually occur internally, somatically, so that we may actually have a whole great deal. It's almost like you can think of it as a knot. And, if the knot was untied and there was no knot in the string, then the energy would just move and flow clearly and directly. But when it knots up, what happens is that energy gets bundled and twisted around itself in many different ways, right? And every single twist is like one of them could be resistance, another could be a feeling of sadness and grief. Another one may be a certain meaning that we assume or that we conclude about ourselves of not being worthy. Another one could be kind of energy of fighting and anger and rage. And so that all these different things that get overlaid are overlaid like a knot over the sense of lack, deficiency, and need, right? And to uncover these lacks has us going through these different layers and feeling through these different difficulties from the perspective or from the approach of allowing it to be as it is, allowing whatever difficulty arises. Let's say it's just resistance, so we just allow the resistance to be as it is, to have its voice without needing it to be different. And sometimes we can't allow. We can't allow because our nervous systems, our minds, our bodies aren't quite strong enough to be able to allow that energy to be as it is. So then we have to meet ourselves, meet our condition at the level and layer that we find ourselves in. right? And so we slowly have to work through these things layer by layer. It's like it's the same as untying a knot, right? When you untie a knot that's been really tightly pulled, you have to actually take one little piece at a time. You have to focus on one part of that string to be able to unknot it. So the principle is the same here. We have to work with the very element that we're at right there and just slowly tend to it, allowing it, giving it the time of day, letting it have its voice, letting it have its expression, letting it have its energy. Because at the end of the day, every single energy is like a certain element in the psyche that also needs similar things like we need, such as love, care, attention, presence, openness, curiosity. Not trying to always fix stuff, not trying to always fix our condition, not always trying to get away from it, but actually meeting our condition clearly and directly and letting it be as it is. I want to bring up 3 elements of noticing need and then integrating need. The first part of need is discerning need. So actually beginning to feel into and be able to recognize the need, right? Being able to articulate the need. So that means to be able to speak it, to see it clearly in your mind, in your body, to be able to speak it, to think it, to feel it, right? So the articulation. And no, I'm not suggesting that you got to just go around and telling people all your needs. You have to find the proper spaces and places where your needs will be met so that you don't get re-traumatized, and so that the same story of my needs are never met doesn't continue on. You have to be very you have to slow yourself down in these places. But you learn how to articulate the need. And then the last part of integrating the need is learning how to receive the need. So sometimes we haven't had these needs met for so long and they're so old, and our stories about these deficiencies are so embedded in our nervous systems, in our bodies, in our minds, in our psyches, that even when the need is being fulfilled in the moment, we cannot receive it. We don't receive it because the whole psyche believes with everything it has that it isn't true, that it will never be met. So it's work to learn how to ease, how to relax, how to open, how to soften, how to lay back and receive. How is reactivity tied to all of this? Reactivity is actually an unconscious bubbling of certain needs, right? So we may say that we don't have needs. We may say that we're totally above that and beyond that. Well, if you really think that's true, notice yourself and how you move throughout the day. If you have no reactivity whatsoever, if you have no attachments, aversions to anything, then maybe it is true. But if you do notice throughout the day in your life that there's certain things that trigger you, that there's certain things that cause a reaction in your body, in your mind, in your emotions, and the reaction doesn't necessarily have to be like a reaction of anger. Because we tend to see reactivity as kind of explosive or opposing something. But reactivity could just as well be hiding, could just as well be withdrawing from a situation, withdrawing from people because it's too much, the overwhelm of being with people or being in contact. So all these are different expressions of reactivity, and there's many more. Feeling of reactivity it's as if it's a automatic charge in the system where one, when it arises in your body, you feel flooded, you feel like you kind of lose connection and contact with yourself. You don't feel like yourself as much any longer, and it could be very subtle, right? So part of me bringing this up is to want to invite you to become aware of your reactivity. If we really haven't explored these things much, then we wait till the reaction is so loud that pretty much we have to pay attention to it, right? But I want you to begin to feel into these things and become aware of them so that you can begin to notice a subtle, slight reactivity already occurring in your system, and to catch it then, and to begin to see, what is it really asking? What is it really after? What is it really saying? What is this reactivity about? And then put in this question of, what may I need? What need may be arising in my body mind that I'm not aware of, that I may be ignoring? Right? So as you do that, you'll notice that actually the reactivity is connected to a certain need. And many times, it's a pretty basic need. It's a need for contact. It's a need to be heard. It's a need to be seen. It's a need to be felt. It's a need to be understood. So if you know these things about yourself in the moment, if you know that, hey, I actually just really want to be held, I need touch, then you can begin to work with these things. Yes, and I know it's difficult to find that in our world nowadays. It's hard to ask for these needs, right? Generally speaking, we don't come up to our family and say, hey, could you hold me for 5 minutes? Could you hold me for 10 minutes? I really need contact, and I just need to be held in silence. I don't want you to comment. I just want to be held, right? It's not very common to do these things, but I'm inviting you to make that into something normal, to normalize it in your family, in your friends, in your partnerships, right? That you can do that you can ask for your needs, that you can ask for your need to be held. So anytime a reactivity arises, I want you to begin to view it from this perspective. What is it that I may need right now? What is it that I may need that I'm unaware of? And begin to learn how to discern, how to articulate, and receive that need. Sometimes it's so miraculous, especially if we have some degree of presence, of contact with the divine, of spirit, that just beginning to discern the need and articulate the need inside yourself, or even speaking it out or writing it down, can begin to break down the defensive ego structures, and the structures that were built can begin to break down some of that knot, so that you can begin to feel a kind of satiation in your body. Almost as if the moment that you discern and articulate the need, just you realizing it begins to draw that energy to you. And it's really miraculous. It's really kind of like a miracle. It's to be able to articulate the need, to discern and articulate the need. And if you're really receptive and open, you can begin to allow the energy, that universal energy, to come into your body, right? Even if you need contact, physical contact, if you don't have anybody next to you, the next best thing is to begin to open yourself to all the other ways that you have contact, right? So even if it's physical contact that you need, you can open up to the presence of contact. And what does that contact feel like when you physically have that next to you? It feels warm. It feels like love. It feels soothing, right? So you can just go straight to that. You can begin to feel the warmth, the love, the contact of spirit, of presence. The presence is making contact with your body now. Of this moment, of the air around you is making contact. I mean, hell, you can just go out in nature, right? All the elements are making contact with your body. Roll around in the ground. Get into the water. Swim. Go into the ocean. Dip into the river. Right? All these things can begin to bring that sense of contact. So I'm just breaking some of these concepts down of like, I need the need to show up in a certain way, in a particular way. I need to have this person here. And, it's like, yes, you can get to that at a certain point. But if you don't have people around and you have certain needs, just become creative about how you receive what you need. In the moment that you begin to receive these things, something shifts, right? The reactivity shifts. Your nervous system settles. Your mind gets clearer. And the more and more you learn how to do this, the more and more these deep, unconscious senses of lack and deficiencies unwind, are released, and brought into the arms of life, of presence of our true nature. So that true nature, spirit, and our awakening doesn't just express itself on the cushion or with certain people or certain contexts, but actually begins to permeate every single aspect of our life and our psyche. And this is some of the work that we have to do to invite presence, spirit, life into these most difficult places. Thanks for joining me.